My name is Nicholas, and I'm 33 years old. At 15, my parents threw me away like garbage because my twin brother Nathan convinced them I was abusing him. His injuries were self-inflicted, his tears were fake, but my abandonment was brutally real. For 18 years, I heard nothing from them until last month when they suddenly needed $175,000 to save their home. When the family who threw you away suddenly needs you, what would you do? My answer shocked everyone, including myself. If you're watching this video, where are you from? Drop a like and subscribe if you've ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal. Trust me, what happened next in my story will show you exactly why sometimes karma needs a little help. Growing up in suburban Cleveland, Nathan and I shared everything: our birthday, our bedroom, our DNA. But that's where the similarities ended. From our earliest memories, Nathan had a talent for manipulation that I couldn't comprehend. When we were 4, he would steal my toys, hide them under his bed, then cry to our mother that I had taken his. By 6, he'd graduated to breaking things around the house and convincing our parents I was the culprit. Our parents, Linda and Robert, tried to present themselves as fair, but there was always a subtle favoritism toward Nathan. When we both told conflicting stories, they believed him. When we both cried, they comforted him first. When we both achieved something, his accomplishment received the lavish praise while mine earned a quick, "good job," before the conversation returned to him. The incident that should have opened their eyes happened when we were 7. I was reading in our room when I heard a series of thumps followed by crying. I ran out to find Nathan at the bottom of the stairs, our parents rushing to his side. Through dramatic sobs, he claimed I had pushed him. I stood frozen in shock, unable to defend myself against something that never happened. I couldn't have pushed him. I hadn't even been on the stairs. "Nicholas!" my father shouted. "Go to your room right now!" "But I was already in my room," I protested. "I was reading. I didn't do anything." My mother's eyes narrowed. "Stop lying. Nathan wouldn't make this up." But he would. He did. And he'd continued to perfect his craft over the years. In school, our differences became more pronounced. I excelled academically, finding refuge in books and learning. Nathan struggled with grades but thrived socially, becoming popular while I remained reserved and increasingly distrustful of others. How could I trust anyone when the truth meant so little in my own home? Nathan's psychological warfare escalated as we entered middle school. He'd spill juice on my homework the night before it was due. He'd hide my textbooks before tests. Once, he deleted a science project from our shared computer that had taken me weeks to complete. Each time, my parents dismissed my accusations as attempts to deflect from my own irresponsibility. "You need to be more organized," my mother would say, while Nathan smirked behind her back. "Stop blaming your brother for everything," my father would add, his disappointment in me evident. I started keeping a journal, documenting each incident with dates and details. I became hypervigilant, developing strategies to protect my belongings and my work. I saved everything in duplicate locations. I kept my most important possessions in a locked box under my bed. I was living like someone in witness protection, in constant fear of the person I was supposed to trust most in the world. When I was 12, my parents finally agreed to family therapy after my school counselor expressed concerns about my growing withdrawal and anxiety. I thought finally, an objective adult would see the truth. During our 3rd session, the therapist, Dr. Rivera, noticed discrepancies in Nathan's stories and gently questioned him. Nathan responded with tears, claiming he felt attacked and unsafe. My parents immediately ended the session and switched therapists. The new one never questioned Nathan again. By 14, I had become a ghost in my own home. I spent as much time as possible at the library or at school activities. I ate dinner quickly and silently, avoiding any interaction that might give Nathan ammunition. I learned to need nothing, ask for nothing, expect nothing. I developed the survival skills of invisibility and self-reliance that would later save me when everything fell apart. Despite everything, there was still a small, stubborn part of me that believed my parents would eventually see the truth. That Nathan would slip up in a way they couldn't ignore. That someone, anyone, would finally believe me. I clung to this hope even as evidence mounted that my parents had made their choice long ago, and it wasn't me. The divide between us became a chasm during freshman year of high school. Nathan was struggling academically while I was flourishing. My science teacher, Mr. Blake, took special interest in my aptitude and encouraged me to join the robotics club. For the first time, I found a place where I belonged, where my contributions were valued. This only intensified Nathan's resentment. Teacher's pet, he'd hiss when no one else could hear. Think you're so special, don't you? One night, I overheard my parents discussing us in the kitchen. I'm worried about Nicholas, my mother said. He hardly talks to us anymore. He's just going through a phase, my father replied dismissively. Nathan says he's been hanging with a strange crowd at school. I hadn't been hanging with any crowd at all. Nathan was poisoning the well, preparing the ground for whatever came next. And I knew something would come next. It always did. I just never imagined how far he would go, or how completely my parents would fail me when it mattered most. My sophomore year science fair project was the first thing I'd ever created that made me truly proud. I'd spent 6 months designing and building a water filtration system that could remove specific contaminants using locally available materials. My science teacher, Mr. Blake, said it had potential real-world applications and encouraged me to enter it in the regional competition. When I received the acceptance letter, it was one of the happiest moments of my life. That's great, Nicholas, my mother said when I showed her the letter, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Just don't get your hopes up too high. These competitions are very competitive. Nathan didn't comment, but I caught the dark look that crossed his face. I should have been more careful. The night before the regional science fair, I stayed late at school finalizing my presentation boards with Mr. Blake. When I got home around 9, the house was quiet. My parents had left a note saying they'd taken Nathan to his basketball game and would grab dinner afterward. I went upstairs to check on my project one last time before bed. It was destroyed. The filtration system I'd built had been dismantled, parts broken and scattered across the floor. The presentation boards were torn apart, months of research and documentation ruined. I stood there, numb with shock, knowing exactly who had done this but unable to comprehend the depth of hatred it represented. When I heard the front door open downstairs, rage replaced shock. I waited in our bedroom, sitting in the dark, as Nathan came upstairs. He flipped on the light, flinching when he saw me. What did I ever do to you? I asked, my voice strangely calm despite the fury inside me. Why would you do this? I don't know what you're talking about, he said, but the smirk on his face told me everything. The science fair is tomorrow, I said. You know how hard I worked on that project. He shrugged. Maybe you should have spent more time on basketball. Dad actually came to my game tonight. When's the last time they came to anything for you? Something snapped inside me. I lunged forward, grabbing him by the shoulders. You've been ruining my life for years. Why? We're brothers. What is wrong with you? I released him almost immediately, stepping back, horrified at my loss of control. Nathan's expression shifted instantly from surprise to something calculating. Without warning, he slammed his own head against the edge of his desk. What are you doing? I shouted, backing away. He did it again, harder, a trickle of blood appearing on his forehead. Then he grabbed a textbook and began hitting his own arms, creating immediate bruises. The calculated violence against himself was terrifying to witness. Nathan, stop! I pleaded, moving toward the door. Mom! Dad! Something's wrong with Nathan! My parents rushed upstairs, bursting into our room to find Nathan on the floor, blood on his face, bruises forming on his arms. He was sobbing, his body shaking. He finally snapped. Nathan said through his tears, pointing at me. He's been hurting me for months. I've been covering for him, making excuses for the bruises, but I can't do it anymore. My parents turned to me, their faces transforming from concern to horror. "Nicholas, what have you done?" my mother whispered. "Nothing. He did this to himself. I caught him destroying my science project and confronted him, and he just started hurting himself. You have to believe me." But I could already see they didn't. They couldn't conceive of someone injuring themselves to frame another. It was too twisted, too calculated. It was easier to believe I had simply lost control. "I've been covering for him," Nathan continued, his performance Oscar-worthy. "I didn't want to cause problems. But it's been getting worse. Last week he threatened to kill me in my sleep if I told anyone." "That's a lie," I shouted, desperation rising. "He's lying. He's always been lying." The commotion brought our neighbors over. Mrs. Peterson from next door gasped when she saw Nathan's condition. The public spectacle only cemented my parents' reaction. Now they had witnesses to their son's injuries and my apparent guilt. That night, an emergency family meeting was called. My Aunt Patricia and Uncle Daniel came over. Nathan repeated his story, adding new details about supposed months of abuse. I tried to defend myself, pointing out inconsistencies in his story, but every objection I raised was seen as denial. "We found Nicholas's journal," my father announced grimly. "It's full of angry writings about Nathan. My private journal, my documentation of Nathan's torments, had been twisted into evidence against me. No one bothered to actually read what I'd written. The mere existence of documented grievances was enough to condemn me." Later that evening, my parents called me into the living room. Nathan was notably absent. "We can't risk keeping you here with Nathan," my father said, his voice cold and distant. "We've made arrangements for you to stay with your Aunt Patricia until we figure out a more permanent solution." "You're choosing him over me," I said, the reality crushing me. "After everything, you're still choosing him." "This isn't about choosing," my mother replied, but her eyes told a different story. "This is about safety." "Whose safety? What about my safety? He destroyed my science project. He's been sabotaging me for years. Stop blaming your brother for your actions," my father snapped. "This victim mentality isn't helping." I watched in disbelief as my mother packed a single suitcase with some of my clothes and basic necessities. There was a mechanical efficiency to her movements, as if she were handling something contaminated. Not once did she meet my eyes. As I prepared to leave with my aunt, my father pulled me aside. "Don't contact us until you get help for your anger," he said. "We love you, Nicholas, but we can't have you hurting Nathan. You need professional help." I walked out of my home on a rainy April evening with $43 in my pocket, a backpack of schoolbooks, and a single suitcase. I didn't know then that it would be 18 years before I heard from my parents again. I didn't know that this wasn't a temporary separation but a complete severing. All I knew was that the final battle in Nathan's war against me had been fought, and he had won completely. The "stay with Aunt Patricia" arrangement lasted exactly 2 days. Her husband, my Uncle Frank, decided they weren't equipped to handle someone with my issues. What they meant was they believed Nathan's lies too, and they were afraid of me. So at 15, I found myself with nowhere to go. The first 3 nights I spent in the bathroom of a public park, sleeping sitting up in a stall, jerking awake at every sound. I avoided the homeless shelters, terrified of being caught by authorities and placed in juvenile detention based on Nathan's allegations. I washed in the park bathroom sink each morning, trying to maintain enough appearance of normalcy to attend school, which had become my only refuge. By the 4th day, the lack of proper sleep and food was taking its toll. I nodded off during English class, and when the bell rang, my school counselor Margaret Stevens was standing at my desk. "Nicholas, I need to see you in my office," she said quietly. I followed her, heart pounding. In her office, she closed the door and looked at me with genuine concern. "You've been wearing the same clothes for days," she said directly. "You look exhausted and your assignments, which are usually impeccable, have been incomplete or missing. What's going on?" I had planned to lie, to make up some story about staying up too late studying. But sitting in that small office with the first adult who seemed to actually see me, something broke. I told her everything, the words pouring out in a desperate flood. About Nathan's history of manipulation, the destroyed science project, the self-inflicted injuries, my parents kicking me out, sleeping in the park bathroom. Margaret's face paled as I spoke. When I finished, she sat in silence for a long moment. "You haven't eaten today, have you?" she finally asked. I shook my head. She opened her desk drawer and handed me a granola bar and an apple from her lunch. While I ate, she made several phone calls, speaking in low, urgent tones. I caught phrases like, emergency situation, and imminent danger. "Here's what's going to happen," she said after hanging up. "I've contacted Child Protective Services. You can't continue living in a park bathroom. It's not safe, and it's not legal for your parents to put you in this position, regardless of their allegations." What I didn't know then was that my situation had just become impossibly complicated. While Margaret was making arrangements for emergency temporary housing, my parents were filing a restraining order against me based on Nathan's claims of abuse. They also reported me as a runaway, despite having kicked me out themselves, creating a contradictory legal narrative that would haunt me for years. The Child Services investigation produced equally contradictory outcomes. Nathan's documented injuries supported my parents' claims, but the timing of events and my previous spotless record created doubt. The investigator noted my excellent academic standing and the testimonials from teachers about my character, which contrasted sharply with the portrait my parents painted of a violent teenager. After 2 weeks of bureaucratic limbo, I was placed in emergency foster care with the Davidson family. The Davidsons had fostered dozens of teens over the years and were well equipped to handle a complicated case like mine. Frank Davidson, a retired high school principal, saw through the allegations immediately. "I've seen plenty of troubled kids," he told me one night. "You're not one of them. You're a kid in trouble, which is different." Living with the Davidsons gave me stability, but it couldn't erase the trauma of my abandonment. I struggled to maintain my grades while working part-time at a local grocery store to save money for the future. I knew the foster care arrangement was temporary, and I needed to prepare for independence. The hardest moments came at school events, where I would occasionally see my parents. They would deliberately avoid eye contact, steering Nathan away if we came too close to crossing paths. Once, during a school assembly, I found myself seated just 2 rows behind them. I watched as my mother laughed at something Nathan whispered, her arm around his shoulders. It was as if I had never existed. Through the school grapevine, I learned that Nathan had spread rumors that I had been institutionalized for violent behavior. Former friends avoided me in the hallways. Teachers who hadn't known me before looked at me with suspicion or pity. I became a ghost, moving through the school day in silence, focusing only on my studies and counting the days until graduation. The stress manifested physically. I developed insomnia, often lying awake until 3 or 4 in the morning before falling into restless sleep. I lost weight, my clothes hanging loose on my frame. Panic attacks became a regular occurrence, my heart racing and breath shortening at unexpected triggers, a slammed door, raised voices, someone calling my name suddenly. In this darkness, I found an unexpected ally in my English teacher, Mr. Harrison. He noticed my writing had taken a dark turn in our creative assignments, and stayed after class one day to talk to me. "There's a difference between fiction and a cry for help," he said, placing my latest essay on the desk between us. "This reads like the latter." Unlike my parents, Mr. Harrison listened. He didn't offer empty platitudes or dismissive reassurances. He simply created space for my truth and acknowledged my pain. He also gave me practical support, helping me apply for scholarships and recommending books that spoke to resilience and self-reliance. "Your life didn't end when they kicked you out," he told me. "It just took an unexpected turn. What matters now is what you do with that turn." I clung to those words like a lifeline. Despite everything, I maintained a 3.8 GPA my sophomore year. Junior year, I raised it to 3.9. By senior year, I was ranked in the top 10% of my class, making me eligible for academic scholarships that would become my ticket out of Cleveland. Graduation day was the final indignity of my high school experience. I sat alone in a sea of students, acutely aware of my parents and extended family gathered to celebrate Nathan. When my name was called, there was only the polite applause of strangers. As I accepted my diploma, I scanned the audience and caught my mother's eye for a split second before she quickly looked away. It was the last time I would see her for 18 years. The summer after graduation, Mr. Harrison helped me secure a partial scholarship to Cleveland Community College. It wasn't the prestigious university I'd once dreamed of, but it was a start, a foundation I could build on. The Davidson family allowed me to continue living with them until the fall semester began, giving me time to save more money from my grocery store job. "You always have a place here during school breaks," Diane Davidson told me as she helped me pack for my dormitory. "We're not your family, but we're in your corner." My dormitory roommate Maxwell Ross initially seemed my complete opposite. While I was reserved and focused solely on academics, Maxwell was outgoing and socially connected. But beneath his easygoing exterior, I discovered a determination that matched my own. He was working his way through college, juggling classes with a job at the campus IT department. "We're both hustlers," he said one night as we both studied late. "Different styles, same goal." That simple acknowledgement of our shared struggle formed the foundation of what would become the most important friendship of my life. Maxwell never pressed for details about my family situation, but he noticed I never received calls or care packages like other students. One Thanksgiving, when I stayed in the dorm because I had nowhere to go, he canceled his own plans to stay with me. "My folks understand," he said when I protested. "Nobody should be alone on Thanksgiving." While taking a full course load in computer science, I worked 2 jobs, mornings at a coffee shop near campus and evenings doing data entry for an insurance company. Between work, classes, and studying, I averaged 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night. But the punishing schedule served a purpose beyond financial necessity. It left no time for dwelling on the past. During my second semester, I finally accepted that I needed professional help to process my trauma. The college offered limited free counseling services, which led me to Dr. Sophia Chin. In our first session, I recounted the bare facts of my abandonment, my voice clinical and detached. "You're talking about yourself like a case study," Dr. Chin observed. "Where are you in this story?" That question cracked something open inside me. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel the full magnitude of what had happened. The betrayal by Nathan, the failure of my parents to protect me, the years of gaslighting that made me doubt my own reality. Dr. Chin helped me name these wounds and begin the slow process of healing them. "Your parents failed you," she said in one pivotal session. "Not because you were unworthy of love, but because they were incapable of seeing the truth. Their failure reflects on them, not on you." During my second year of college, I secured a coding internship that revealed my natural talent for software development. My supervisor, Ryan Fleming, took notice of my abilities and became a mentor, challenging me to apply to more prestigious programs. "You're wasting your potential here," he said bluntly. "You should be at MIT or Stanford." With Ryan's recommendation and my now perfect GPA, I transferred to a computer science program at a well-regarded state university on a full academic scholarship. The day I received my acceptance letter was the first time I'd felt genuine pride in years. On my mother's birthday during my junior year, I made a brief, failed attempt at contact. I sent a simple card with my phone number inside. It was returned unopened, marked "Refused by recipient." That small rejection confirmed what I already knew. They had moved on without me, and I needed to do the same. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that Nathan was attending an expensive private college, funded by my parents' savings and a second mortgage on their home. The knowledge stung, but it also hardened my resolve. I wasn't working this hard for them or to prove something to them. I was doing it for myself, building a life they had no part in. "Success is the best revenge," Maxwell would say when I shared these moments of bitterness. Lives so well they can't ignore it. I graduated summa cum laude and immediately received multiple job offers. I accepted a position with a promising tech startup in Chicago, eager to put physical distance between myself and Cleveland. The company was developing innovative software for healthcare systems, and my contributions quickly gained recognition from management. At an industry conference in my second year with the company, I met Emily Bennett, a brilliant user experience designer whose perspective challenged and complemented my own. Our collaboration on a project led to late-night discussions, shared meals, and eventually, a relationship that would heal parts of me I thought permanently broken. "You're so careful with your trust," she observed early in our relationship. "Like you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop." With Emily, I gradually lowered the walls I'd built around myself. I told her about Nathan, about my parents, about the years of homelessness and struggle. Instead of pity, she offered understanding and unwavering support. "Thank you for trusting me with your story," she said simply. "It helps me understand why you are the way you are, and I like who you are." At 27, Maxwell and I launched our own software company, leveraging the industry connections we both cultivated. Our first product, a security protocol that addressed vulnerabilities in electronic medical record systems, attracted immediate attention from major healthcare providers. Within 18 months, we were profitable and expanding rapidly. By 30, I had achieved financial success beyond anything I could have imagined as that homeless 15-year-old sleeping in a park bathroom. I purchased my first home, a modern townhouse in a quiet Chicago neighborhood. On the night Emily and I moved in together, I proposed to her on our empty living room floor, surrounded by unpacked boxes and takeout containers. "I never thought I'd have this," I told her as she said yes. "A home that feels safe. Someone who chooses me every day." We created a life filled with chosen family, Maxwell and his wife Vanessa, colleagues who became friends, Emily's large and welcoming extended family who embraced me without question. I built carefully constructed boundaries around this life, deliberately excluding any connection to my blood relatives. I never searched for my parents online, never drove past our old house when business took me to Cleveland, never allowed myself to wonder what had become of them. Until they found me. On a Tuesday morning in April, 18 years after I walked out of my childhood home for the last time, an email arrived in my work account. The subject line read, "Please help, son. We were wrong." I stared at the sender's name, Robert Wilson, my father, feeling as though the ground had suddenly shifted beneath me. My hands began to shake, my vision narrowed, and my chest tightened painfully. Emily, who had stopped by my office to pick up lunch, recognized the signs of a panic attack immediately. "Breathe with me," she instructed, kneeling beside my chair. "In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. When I could speak again, I pointed wordlessly at the screen. Emily read the email, her expression darkening. "You don't have to open this," she said firmly. "You don't owe them anything." But despite 18 years of silence, despite all the rational arguments for deleting the message unread, something in me needed to know what crisis had finally prompted them to acknowledge their mistake. The email was brief. "Nicholas, we need your help. We've made terrible mistakes and we're paying for them now. Nathan has done things we never imagined possible. We're about to lose our home. Please consider meeting with us. We were wrong about everything. Dad." No apology. No acknowledgement of the years of silence. Just a plea for help wrapped in vague admissions of error. I closed the laptop without responding and took the rest of the day off. That night, Emily held me while I alternated between rage and a grief so profound it felt physical. "How dare they?" I said, pacing our bedroom. 18 years of nothing, and now they need money? Now they were wrong? The next day, I called Dr. Chin, who had remained an occasional resource throughout my adult life. She listened as I processed my conflicted feelings. "What do you want from this situation?" she asked. "Not what you think you should want, or what would make you a good person in some abstract sense. What do you, Nicholas, actually want?" I want to know why, I admitted. Not just why they're contacting me now, but why they chose him. Why they threw me away so easily. Dr. Chen nodded. Then perhaps a meeting on your terms might provide that. But remember, you control the engagement. You decide the boundaries. You decide what, if anything, you're willing to give. Over the next week, I investigated my parents' situation through online research. Their home was indeed in foreclosure proceedings, public records showing they were $380,000 underwater on their mortgage. Court records revealed Nathan had been charged with financial fraud multiple times in recent years. The picture that emerged was of parents who had been systematically exploited by the son they had chosen. After much deliberation, I agreed to meet them, with conditions: a public cafe, Emily present, a 90-minute time limit. I prepared meticulously, rehearsing responses to possible scenarios, developing an exit strategy if things became too overwhelming, even placing a small recording device in my pocket to capture the conversation for later review with Dr. Chen. When the day arrived, Emily and I got to the cafe 30 minutes early to secure a table near the exit. I watched the door with growing anxiety until they appeared, and the sight of them stopped my breath. They had aged dramatically, my father's once commanding posture now stooped, my mother's dark hair now gray and thin. They hesitated at the entrance, scanning the room until my father's eyes locked with mine. Recognition, relief, and shame crossed his face in rapid succession. They approached slowly, almost tentatively, as if expecting me to flee. My mother's eyes filled with tears as she took in the sight of me, the boy she had last seen at 18, now a grown man of 33. "Nicholas," she whispered, reaching out a trembling hand that I did not take. "You look so much like your grandfather." We sat in awkward silence until the waitress took our orders. I said nothing, waiting for them to begin, to explain why we were here after all this time. "Thank you for agreeing to see us," my father finally said, his voice rougher than I remembered. "We know we have no right to ask anything of you. Yet here you are asking," I replied evenly. My mother flinched at my tone. "We've lost everything," she said, her voice breaking. "The house is in foreclosure. Our retirement is gone. Nathan." She trailed off, unable to continue. My father picked up the thread. "Nathan has been troubled for many years. More than troubled. We didn't see it for so long. He manipulated us, took advantage of our trust. He's emptied our accounts, maxed out credit cards in our names." I felt a cold satisfaction hearing this confession. "So Nathan finally targeted you instead of me. And now you need money." "It's not just that," my mother interjected desperately. "Nicholas," he admitted it. Years ago, he admitted he lied about the abuse. About everything. The cafe around me seemed to fade away as her words registered. Years ago. Not recently. Years ago. "When?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "When did he admit this?" My parents exchanged a glance heavy with shame. 7 years ago. My father admitted reluctantly. He was drunk, angry that we wouldn't give him money for some investment scheme. He threw it in our faces, how gullible we'd been, how easily he'd manipulated us into getting rid of you. 7 years. 7 years they had known the truth, and they had said nothing. Done nothing. Made no attempt to find me, to make amends, to acknowledge the monstrous injustice they had participated in. "Why didn't you contact me then?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "We were ashamed," my mother whispered. "How could we face you after what we'd done?" And then time passed, and it seemed impossible. Until you needed $175,000 to save your house. I finished for her. "We're not asking for a handout," my father said quickly. "We can arrange repayment terms. We just have nowhere else to turn. The bank won't work with us anymore. Nathan has destroyed our credit." I stood abruptly, overwhelmed by the audacity, the selfishness still driving their actions. They hadn't come seeking reconciliation or to make amends. They had come because they needed something from me. "I need some air," I said, walking out without waiting for their response. Outside, I gulped the cool spring air, trying to steady myself. Emily followed, placing a gentle hand on my back. "Do you want to leave?" she asked. "We can walk away right now." Part of me did want to leave, to let them sit there wondering if I would return, experiencing a fraction of the abandonment they had inflicted on me. But another part needed to finish this conversation, to say things I had held inside for 18 years. "I need a minute," I said. "Then I want to finish this." Emily nodded, then turned toward the cafe with unexpected determination. "I'll let them know you'll be back. And I have a few things to say myself." Through the window, I watched as she spoke to my parents, her posture rigid with controlled anger. My mother seemed to shrink with each word, while my father stared at the table, unable to meet her eyes. When Emily returned, her face was flushed. "What did you say to them?" I asked. "I told them they had years to make this right," she replied. "Years they chose to waste because of their own comfort. I told them whatever you decide, they should be grateful you're even considering helping them after what they did." We returned to the table, where my parents sat in subdued silence. The conversation that followed was strained and painful, but as we drove home afterward, I felt a strange mixture of rage, vindication, and unexpected pity. They had made their choice 18 years ago, and they had been living with the consequences ever since, even before they realized what Nathan truly was. "They're pathetic," I told Emily as we drove. "And I still don't know what I'm going to do." The day after meeting my parents, I contacted Christina Walker, a private investigator recommended by our company's legal counsel. I needed more information before making any decision about their request for financial help. "I need to know everything," I told Christina during our initial consultation. "Not just their current financial situation, but the whole history with my brother. I need to know when they knew the truth and what they did about it." Over the next 2 weeks, Christina compiled a comprehensive report that confirmed my worst suspicions while revealing new layers of dysfunction I hadn't imagined. Nathan's history of manipulation extended far beyond his treatment of me. He had systematically defrauded not just our parents but other relatives, former employers, and romantic partners. There were multiple restraining orders against him from ex-girlfriends, and he had narrowly avoided criminal charges several times through settlements and family intervention. Most damning were the emails Christina recovered between my parents from 7 years ago, when Nathan first confessed his lies about me. My mother had actually suggested reaching out to me then. "We need to find Nicholas and tell him the truth. What we did was unforgivable, but he deserves to know Nathan lied." My father's response crushed any hope of reconciliation. "What good would it do now? It's been 11 years. He's either succeeded without us or he hasn't. Either way, bringing this up only serves to ease our guilt, not help him. And what about Nathan? He needs our support right now." They had made a conscious decision to continue their silence, to prioritize Nathan and their own comfort over truth and justice. Even knowing I had been innocent, they chose to leave me in exile rather than face their own culpability. Christina's investigation also revealed that my parents had enabled Nathan despite numerous red flags. They had paid off his debts, hired lawyers to minimize legal consequences, and continued giving him access to their finances even after catching him stealing from them multiple times. They had been willing participants in their own destruction, just as they had been willing participants in mine. Armed with this information, I called a strategy session with the people I trusted most, Emily, Maxwell, and Dr. Chin. We gathered in our living room on a Sunday afternoon, the evidence from Christina's investigation spread across the coffee table. "They've known the truth for 7 years and did nothing," I said, still struggling to process this betrayal. "They only reached out because they need money. You have no obligation to help them," Maxwell stated firmly. "After what they did, most people would tell them to go to hell. But that's not really the question," Dr. Chin interjected gently. "The question is what response will bring you peace. Not them, you." Emily, who had been quietly reviewing the financial documents, looked up. "What if there's a middle option? Something between telling them to get lost and just writing a check?" That conversation led to the development of what Maxwell jokingly called Operation Accountability. I would provide financial assistance, but with strict conditions that would force my parents to confront the consequences of their actions while preventing any future manipulation. I arranged a second meeting with my parents, this time at a small conference room in my attorney's office. Their expressions when I walked in, flanked by my lawyer, David Keller, and Christina Walker, revealed their surprise at the formality of the arrangement. Before we discuss any financial assistance, I began without preamble. I want to be clear about my terms. These are non-negotiable. I outlined my conditions one by one, watching their faces as the reality of what I was proposing sank in. First, you will make a full acknowledgement of what happened to the entire extended family. Uncle Daniel, Aunt Rachel, everyone who was told I was violent and dangerous will hear the truth directly from you. My mother began to protest. Nicholas, please, can't this be between us? The humiliation of admitting you abandoned your innocent 15-year-old son? I asked coldly. Yes, I imagine that would be humiliating. That's the point. My father placed a restraining hand on my mother's arm. What else? You will sign a legally binding document. I continued, nodding to David, who slid a folder across the table. It details the events as they actually occurred, including Nathan's confession and your 7 years of silence afterward. This document will be notarized and kept on file with my attorney. They exchanged uneasy glances but didn't object. Finally, you will both commit to 500 hours of community service at the West Side Youth Shelter. It's a facility for homeless teens, many of whom were abandoned by their families, just like I was. We want to make things right. My father said carefully. But isn't this excessive? We're not young, Nicholas. 500 hours is less time than I spend homeless because of your choices. I finished for him. The shelter needs volunteers for everything from administrative work to cooking meals. You're physically capable of contributing. I let my words hang in the air before delivering the final component of my terms. If you agree to these conditions, I will pay the minimum amount needed to stop the immediate foreclosure proceedings, approximately $75,000. This will be structured as a loan with a lien against the property. You will not have access to any equity in the home without my approval. My mother's face fell at the amount, so much less than they had hoped for. But the bank says we need. The bank says you need $175,000 to clear the entire defaulted amount. I interrupted. I'm offering enough to stop the foreclosure and give you breathing room. If you want more, you'll need to sell the house and downsize. The disappointment on their faces confirmed what I had suspected. They hadn't just wanted financial rescue. They had wanted complete absolution at a discount price. They had expected me to swoop in, solve their problems, and perhaps even welcome them back into my life with open arms, all while maintaining their dignity and privacy. These terms aren't about punishment, I said, softening my tone slightly. They're about accountability. For 18 years, there have been no consequences for what you did to me. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for acknowledgement and for actions that demonstrate genuine remorse. After some private discussion, they reluctantly agreed to my terms. The family gathering was arranged for the following Sunday at Uncle Daniel's house. I chose not to attend, having no desire to witness their humiliation or manage the family fallout, but Christina attended as my representative and recorded the proceedings with permission. The recording revealed the stunned silence that greeted my parents' confession, followed by an eruption of questions and recriminations. Aunt Rachel, who had always been somewhat skeptical of Nathan, was particularly furious. "You threw away your son," she shouted at one point. "A child! And you've known for 7 years that it was all based on lies? How do you sleep at night?" My cousin Tyler admitted he had always suspected something was off about Nathan's story. He kept changing details every time he told it. I tried to tell Mom, but no one wanted to believe Nicholas could be completely innocent. The document was signed and notarized the following day. It was 3 pages of unvarnished truth, a permanent record of their failure, and a safeguard against any future attempts to rewrite history. My parents' signatures at the bottom appeared shaky, the physical manifestation of their reluctant acknowledgement. The financial arrangements were equally precise. I paid exactly $75,000 to the bank, enough to pause the foreclosure proceedings and establish a new payment plan. The lien against the property ensured that my parents couldn't take out additional loans against the house or sell it without my involvement. It was protection against both Nathan's potential manipulations and my parents' demonstrated financial irresponsibility. As we concluded the legal proceedings, my father attempted one last appeal to emotion. "We were hoping this would be a new beginning," he said tentatively. "A chance to rebuild some kind of relationship." I looked at him directly, allowing him to see not anger but simple clarity in my eyes. "That's not what this is," I replied. "This is me preventing you from becoming homeless because despite everything, I'm not like you. I don't abandon family in their time of need. But make no mistake, writing this check doesn't make us family. That ended the day you chose Nathan over the truth." As they left my attorney's office, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction in their rejection. What I felt was the weight of 18 years of pain beginning, finally, to lift from my shoulders. Not because I had punished them, but because I had refused to participate in the fiction that their actions could be erased with a simple apology and a request for money. They had wanted absolution without atonement. I had offered them a path to both, but only through the difficult terrain of public accountability and genuine restitution. Whether they would truly walk that path remained to be seen, but I had done all I could to ensure they couldn't easily stray from it. 1 year after my parents reappeared in my life, Emily and I were expecting our first child, a daughter we planned to name Sophia after Dr. Chin, whose guidance had been instrumental in my healing journey. The nursery was painted a soft green, with bookshelves already filled with stories I couldn't wait to read to her. My relationship with my parents had evolved into something I never expected, a carefully managed, strictly bounded connection. They called once a month, conversations limited to superficial updates and practical matters. I had not invited them to our small wedding 6 months earlier, nor had I shared the news of Emily's pregnancy. Some boundaries, once established, were necessary for my continued well-being. They had completed nearly 300 hours at the youth shelter, a commitment they had initially approached as a punishment, but which my mother had recently described as unexpectedly meaningful. Whether this represented genuine growth or merely the human capacity to adapt to circumstances, I couldn't say with certainty. I maintained a policy of cautious neutrality, acknowledging their efforts without investing emotionally in their redemption story. My foundation for displaced teens, started with a portion of the profits from our company's recent acquisition, had gained recognition for its innovative approach to supporting young people in situations similar to what I had experienced. We provided not just immediate housing but comprehensive support, educational assistance, mental health services, legal advocacy, and mentorship from adults who had themselves overcome family trauma. Each success story from the foundation helped heal a piece of my own past. Each teenager who found stability and purpose through our programs reinforced my belief that while we cannot change our histories, we can transform their meaning through the lives we touch. On a Tuesday afternoon in early June, my assistant interrupted a meeting to inform me that Nathan was in the lobby, insisting on seeing me. I had not seen or spoken to my twin brother since the night he had engineered my expulsion from our family. He had been released from minimum security prison 3 months earlier after serving 14 months for fraud. I excused myself from the meeting and took the elevator down, pulse quickening with each floor. When the doors opened, I saw him immediately. Despite 18 years and vastly different life paths, the genetic blueprint we shared was unmistakable. Same height, same bone structure, same blue eyes. But where I was fit and well-dressed, he appeared haggard, his expensive but rumpled clothing hanging loosely on his frame. "Nicholas," he said, stepping forward with his hand extended, as if we were business acquaintances at a conference. "You look well. Success suits you." I did not take his hand. "What do you want, Nathan?" His smile faltered slightly. "Can we talk somewhere private? Brother to brother?" The familiar manipulation in those words, The implied intimacy and obligation washed over me without effect. Years of therapy had inoculated me against exactly this type of emotional blackmail. "We can talk in the visitors' lounge," I said, gesturing to a small room off the lobby. "I have 15 minutes. Once seated across from each other, Nathan launched into a performance I recognized immediately, the contrite prodigal, reformed by consequences, seeking reconciliation. It was masterfully done, complete with misty eyes at precisely the right moments, and self-deprecating admissions of past failures. "I was sick, Nicholas," he said, leaning forward earnestly. "Mentally ill. I've been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. The things I didn't fully understand the consequences." "You understood enough to target me specifically," I replied evenly. "To plan and execute elaborate scenarios designed to turn our parents against me. To maintain those lies for years." He sighed dramatically. "I know I can never undo what I did. But I'm getting help now. Real help. And I thought, with Mom and Dad getting older, maybe it's time to put the past behind us. To be a family again." The request hidden within his monologue became clear. With our parents' financial resources depleted and his own reputation in tatters, Nathan was looking for a new target. Me, with my successful company and stable life. "What exactly are you hoping for here, Nathan?" I asked directly. "Money? A job? Absolution?" His mask slipped for just a moment, irritation flashing across his features before the performance resumed. "I just want my brother back. Is that so hard to believe?" "Yes," I said simply. "It is." I stood, signaling the end of our conversation. "I forgive you, Nathan. Not for your benefit, but for mine. Carrying anger toward you serves no purpose in my life anymore. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation, and it doesn't mean access. We share DNA. That's all we share." His facade cracked completely then, the practiced contrition giving way to the familiar contempt I remembered from childhood. "You think you're so much better than me," he hissed, rising to his feet. "St. Nicholas, with his fancy office and his charity work. You've always been pathetic, desperate for approval. You think those people up there respect you? They're using you, just like everyone else." I watched this display with a strange sense of detachment, as if observing a once feared movie villain now rendered cartoonish and ineffective. The person before me had once held immense power over my life, had shaped its trajectory through calculated cruelty. Now he was just a bitter man whose manipulations had finally caught up with him. "Goodbye, Nathan," I said, walking toward the door. "Don't contact me again." "She'll leave you, you know," he called after me, a final attempt to wound. "Your wife. Once she sees who you really are. They always leave." I turned back one last time. "The difference between us, Nathan, is that I know who I really am. And so does she." As I rode the elevator back to my office, I felt an unexpected lightness. The confrontation I had dreaded for years had come and gone, leaving me not traumatized but liberated. Nathan no longer held any power over me, not because I had become successful or wealthy, but because I had done the harder work of healing the wounds that had made me vulnerable to his manipulation in the first place. 2 weeks later, at Emily's baby shower, I looked around at the people gathered to celebrate with us: Maxwell and Vanessa, Dr. Chin, the Davidsons who had taken me in as a teenager, Mr. Harrison who had traveled from Cleveland for the occasion, colleagues who had become friends, Emily's loving family who had embraced me without reservation. This was my true family, forged through choice and commitment rather than mere biology. "Speech!" Maxwell called out, raising his glass. "The expectant father needs to say a few words." As I stood, Emily's hand in mine, I felt a profound gratitude for the journey that had brought me here, even its most painful chapters. 18 years ago, I began. I thought family was something you were born into, something that could be taken away. I've learned it's something you build, choice by choice, day by day. Thank you all for being part of the family Emily and I have chosen. Later that night, as Emily slept beside me, I worked on a letter to our unborn daughter, a promise of the unconditional love and support she would always have. "Your mother and I can't wait to meet you," I wrote. "We promise you'll always have a home with us, no matter what. Your voice will always be heard. Your truth will always matter. You are already so loved, not for what you do or achieve, but simply for being exactly who you are." As I finished the letter, I realized that in writing these promises to my daughter, I was also healing the wounded 15-year-old boy I had once been. By becoming the parent I had needed, I was completing a circle of healing that extended beyond my own life into the next generation. The following weekend, Emily and I finished preparing the nursery, hanging a mobile of stars above the crib and arranging stuffed animals on a shelf. As we stood back to admire our work, Emily slipped her arm around my waist. "You're going to be an amazing father," she said softly. "You know that, right?" "I'm going to try," I replied. Every day. The journey from that rainy April night when I was thrown away to this moment of anticipation and hope had been long and often painful. There had been times when survival itself seemed impossible, when the weight of betrayal threatened to crush my capacity for trust and connection. But standing in that nursery, looking toward the future rather than the past, I understood that true victory wasn't in revenge or even justice. It was in breaking the cycle, in creating something new and beautiful from the ashes of what was lost, in choosing, deliberately and consciously, to be more than what was done to me. I had once believed that making my parents regret their choice was the only possible resolution to my story. What I discovered was that their regret, while satisfying on some level, was ultimately secondary to my own healing and growth. The life I had built, the person I had become, the family I was creating, these were the true measures of success. Have you ever faced betrayal from someone who was supposed to protect you? How did you rebuild trust afterward? Share your experience in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their past doesn't define their future. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the family you choose is more important than the one you're born into.